So give yourselves a woo. Woo! Oh, y'all are good. But you gotta get the hands going too. So, okay, will you do it again? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Woo! All right, so woo, good morning. So Lynn, so nice to see you. How are you?
You know, it's actually snowing here in Chicago.
Okay.
So aren't most of you glad you don't live in Chicago?
Well, I would say yes, because we just drove in yesterday and drove in the snow most of the day. I was telling Glenn a little bit earlier, the first few hours in the morning. Matter of fact, we started out because we're trying to get the driving in while there's light. And, it's dark at 5 and it's dark at 5. So trying to squeeze it in. But it was so snowy and so hard to see at 5 in the morning when we were trying to leave Tucumcari, New Mexico, that we actually turned around at the next exit, went back to the hotel, went into their little sitting area for an hour just to wait for some light to happen because it was so dark and there was no light and the snow was coming down so hard. And it's like, honey, I think this is just too dangerous to drive right now. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we did. We went back in, had a cup of coffee, and then we left an hour later where at least the sky had lightened where we could see the side of the road. So
you can see the snow.
Why am I coming to the Midwest? I must be crazy.
Well, you're always welcome here.
No, thank you. Oh, I remember when we lived in Chicago, our 10 months of living there, it was the coldest cold I'd ever felt in my life. It was so cold. Oh, gosh. But the spring and summer was beautiful, so that was all good. Mm-hmm. So cool. Well, good morning, everybody. Who is out here with us today? Are y'all going to say good morning to us? And where are you? Look for my Kansas City gals who are usually on with us. They did get a little bit of snow, so there's a snow dusting out on the yard, but it's melting pretty fast, so it's not staying very long. So, well, Lynn, tell everybody a little bit about you. Lynn, well, I'm going to first say, Lynn and I have been friends now. We met at a big speakers event. What was it, 5-6 years ago?
It's probably longer than that, but who's counting?
Really? Wow. Well, I love that. That means I've been blessed all these years by being with you. And we just connected so quickly. It was just wonderful. We practiced videos in the hallway, right? We were both kind of new. I've been doing some and she'd been doing some. So we kind of helped critique and film each other in the hallway and then decided that, we liked each other so much. Why don't we just talk every week? And we've been talking pretty much every Wednesday for the last whatever that number of years is. And it has been such a blessing. So that's why I knew y'all would get so much from hearing Lynn. She is an expert in many areas, but let me just say, she's one of my brainiacs. God has brought these couple of, I call y'all brainiac, and that is a compliment because I'm so in awe of how you can read manuals and enjoy it. That just doesn't resonate with me. But she calls herself a neuroscience nerd. So, Lynn, tell us a little bit about you before you get into your subject.
Hey, well, as a neuroscience nerd, what that means is, as Delinda said, I read the boring brain research, and then I try to figure out what does it mean in the real world, because underneath everything, my mission is to help leaders do a better job of connecting with their people so everybody can reach their goals faster. And understanding how people's brains work and process information and how they make decisions is a great tool to better connect with people. So I'm not making it all about me all the time. I'm making it about the people that I'm trying to reach. And I do a better job because I understand how they think and make decisions and how they feel, because that's how their brain works. That's literally me in a nutshell.
I love it. Because and the whole point, right, and a part of that whole point is that if I understand the people that I'm talking to, and if I can communicate with them better, we're going to connect faster, right? If we can just make that connection, and then it just opens the avenue for better relationships, better communication, all of that, right?
Right. And that's the point. That's the point, because there's only so much we can do on our own. we can do a whole lot more when we're working with other people. And if they understand that we're coming in goodwill to make things happen, that's going to make things happen faster.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Lynne is going to be one of our brilliant speakers at our Wow the World conference. And I'm going to tell y'all more about that at the end, because Lynne has a very important appointment that she has to pop off right at the top of the hour. So I'll fill you in on the details of that later, because I don't want you to miss a minute of what she has to talk to us about. So Lynne, I know for myself that there's just sometimes through the years that there have been people that I have put off talking to because I know it's not going to be a good conversation. I know they're going to react, or at least I anticipate their reaction. So I don't want to talk to them because I hate confrontation. Mm-hmm. So I think that happens a lot, both personally and business wise. So talk to us a little bit about that, those hard conversations.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the reason why they happen, it's simple. There's only one reason why difficult conversations happen, and that's because there's a gap. There's a gap between what you expect and what the other person or the other group expects. And so I say it becomes our job as enlightened human beings to be able to bridge that gap. And I've actually got a process. I say you need to become a doctor of persuasion, or a GAP MD. So that's the acronym for the process that I use. And believe me, this is a process I use. Probably the toughest conversation I ever had was when I had to ask my husband of 27 years to part company. Wow. And in order to do that, this is a process that I used. And the upshot is we are friends today, in part because of the way that I handled that difficult conversation in a way that was kind to him, but also respectful of me. And so that's what I invite all of us to do when we're having difficult conversations. I say the reason that he and I, and his name is Larry, the reason that Larry and I are good friends, and he comes over and works on things at my house, is because I didn't have to punish him. I just had to let him go. So the first question we need to ask when we're about to go into any difficult conversation is, what's our motivation? What do we want to have happen as a result? Do we want to punish the person, or do we want to create something better? And if you realize, I just want to make that person feel bad, it's probably not a good conversation for us to have. There's some other work we need to do before we have the conversation, work we need to do on us. But when you're ready to create something better, then I can walk you through the process that I use that works.
Wow. And I remember when you were walking through there too, and just really amazing being now on that other side. I mean, you share Simon. He helps you out with Simon when you go out of town. Simon being the puppy that's walking
around. Yeah.
So, continue. Tell us,
okay.
And
part of it is understanding how your brain works. And the truth is that our brains are pattern seeking organs. So we're always looking for patterns for things, because if we feel like we've been through something before, then we don't have to think so hard about it now, do we? We can kind of wing it. And I say that's the biggest mistake you can make when you're going to have a difficult conversation, is to wing it. Is to say, I've done this before, because usually 5 minutes into it, things have taken a turn in a direction you don't want to go. And, you've stepped in something you'd rather scrape off the bottom of your shoe. So don't wing it. Here are some steps and some ideas that you can keep in mind the next time you need to have a difficult conversation. So we're back to become a doctor of persuasion, or a GAP MD. And the A stands for audience. So who is the person, or who are the people that you're going to have this conversation with? And literally take a minute and write stuff down, because here's the truth. So it's more neuroscience. When I'm thinking in words, I'm using my left brain, which is my logical brain. When I'm writing longhand across a piece of paper, I'm using my right brain, my creative brain. And so when I'm sitting and writing things down longhand, I'm getting both sides of my brain to work with me. So I don't have to think as hard. So literally write this stuff down. And it's answers to questions. Obviously, if you're talking about a work conversation, it's about, all right, so do they report to me? Do I report to them? Where are we in the hierarchy to each other? What have we done in situations where our opinions have differed in the past? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And then dig a little deeper. What is this person afraid of? And what does this person want? Because when you're thinking about that kind of stuff, number one, you're automatically making them more human rather than the cardboard cutout bad guy. You're getting in touch with their humanity and with your own, frankly. And the second thing is that you're coming up with information you're going to be able to use to help this conversation go better. If you know this person is afraid of never getting a promotion at work, okay, then one of the things you can do in this conversation is talk about how, if you solve this problem together, the person is going to be more able to move up in the organization. So take a look at their fears and their wants and keep that stuff in mind as you're having the conversation. So Delinda, I know you do this all the time. You're always thinking about how people, sorry about this.
Okay.
You're always thinking about how people feel and how they'll take information. So some of us do this more, more unconsciously than others. But part of what our brain ends up doing that can trip us up is that we can start thinking about, it's called confirmation bias. Once I hold an opinion on something, this person is a jerk. Then I look around for all kinds of information to support my opinion of this person is a jerk. And I automatically discount information that shows that they aren't a jerk. So know that your brain has that tendency to look for things that support its own opinion. And so there may be some of this stuff, and there may be some buttons this person pushes on you. So when you're paying attention to who they are, ask yourself, what buttons do they push on me? Maybe she has a high grating voice and you just hate talking to her because it's like fingernails on the blackboard. Okay, know this stuff before you go in. So you actually spend a little time getting to know, paying attention to this person. So that's the
I love that, because it is there, and if we pay attention to it, then we can go in realizing we can talk to ourselves beforehand so that it doesn't irritate us so much, right? That we kind of go in, okay, I love that. And I think in general, it appears that, as in most things, if we take time beforehand to think about whatever we're getting ready to do, as opposed to just going off half-cocked, like you said earlier, you're used to it, so you don't go off haphazard into it or just assume it's going to go, but actually thinking about it ahead of time. Those are great thoughts, great advice.
Yeah, well, and it's almost as though you've read my mind, because the next step, the G, is goals. All right, so what's the goal for having this conversation? Because when we set goals, and I'm back to neuroscience again, what ends up happening is that we send information from our conscious mind down into our subconscious mind, which chews on it. And it starts bubbling up ideas that we can use. So your conscious mind, for example, could process between 10 to 50 bits of information per second. Your subconscious mind handles like 14 million bits of information per second. So your subconscious mind has access to stuff you don't even know is going on. And so when you set a goal, and make it simple, it could be something like, and so and for another neuroscience point is that you can only hold 3 ideas in your short-term memory. So don't make your goals too complicated. It could be something like, in a 30-minute conversation with Babs, I will listen more than I speak, ask her for her opinion, and come away with good ideas of what we're going to do next. Okay, that's a whole lot easier to remember. Those 3 things a whole lot easier than the 5 or 10 things we think of. So you do a brain dump when you're paying attention to who the other person is. Don't do a brain dump on goals. If you want to write a whole bunch of goals down and then figure out which are the 3 most important ones, great. But make them clear and simple and memorable. And that way it makes it a whole lot easier for you. You can remember this stuff. You're not struggling and losing brain power on that. All right, so goals. Make them clear and measurable and simple, and 3 at the most. Because once again, your subconscious mind has access to a whole lot more information. It starts bubbling things up. You've had this experience, haven't you, where you've tried to remember the name of some kid you went to high school with, and you can't. And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up and you remember their name. Well, because your subconscious mind has been chewing on this. I say, let it chew on how to help you out in these conversations.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's awesome.
All right. So the next A is ask. Ask good questions. And I mean, write them down beforehand. Because the last thing you want to do is have a difficult conversation come through completion and then realize, oh, shoot, I forgot to ask them this. And then go back and reopen the conversation. So I say, write down all the questions that you need answered, the information that you need. Do it in advance when you're not feeling stressed out. And it's true, the conversation may take you some places where you hadn't thought about questions, and you can come up with new questions as you're going. But having all of those questions there, at least as a reference point, will help you know that you're going to cover everything you need to cover.
Wow.
So I say, make it as easy on yourself as you can.
And again, it's that doing it beforehand. Boy, that seems to be a consistent thought here, Lynn.
Right. Yeah. So it's once again, don't wing it. These are all of the important things you need to be paying attention to before you even have the conversation. All right. Which then finally takes us into the conversation. And that's P, which stands for paraphrase.
Oh,
and
right.
Paraphrase literally is playing back the words that somebody says and not changing them up and not adding your opinion. So if I say, Delinda, I'm really angry about this. And Delinda says, I get it. You're really angry about this. What ends up happening for me as the receiver of that, it's, oh, she's listening to what I have to say. She's paying attention. She understands. She cares. If Delinda had said, looks like you're mad about something, not the same thing. And I don't feel as listened to and as cared for. So when you're paraphrasing, literally use the words that somebody has used with you. Because when you change up the words, a lot of times there are judgments and opinions that travel along with them. And it breaks the connection with people. Because I've heard people say, isn't that just redundant? I've just said what they just said. That's not how people receive it. They receive it as you're paying attention, you understand, and they're grateful for that. So when you paraphrase, use their words, not yours. It's a simple technique, but once again, don't overthink it. It forces you to truly be present. And and the only way you can paraphrase well is if you listen well. And there are basically neuroscience, from the neuroscience perspective, 2 ways to listen. The first is the most common, which is listening to respond. We listen to the content of what people are saying, and then we're thinking about what it is we're going to say when they stop talking. Or even in those extreme cases, and we've all run into those people, we can tell that they can't wait for us to shut up so they can talk. And sometimes they don't wait for us to shut up. Okay. And you don't feel seen and heard and connected with those people. You feel annoyed. So listening to respond gives you the content of what somebody's saying. Okay. But particularly in difficult conversations, you want to do the deeper kind of listening, which is listening for understanding and empathy. Meaning you're not just paying attention to the content of their words, you're looking at their body language, you're listening to their tone of voice, you're listening to looking at their facial expressions and getting a sense of the whole person rather than just responding to what they're saying. And when you do that, because I truly believe most of us wander around feeling chronically unseen and heard. But when somebody takes the time to truly focus on us and paraphrase what we're saying and make us feel like we really matter, we want to work with those people. And if we're in a difficult situation, that's what we want to do. We want to come through this together. Because there's something called the rule of reciprocity. If you listen really well to what I'm saying to Linda, I'm going to be interested in what you have to say too. You don't have to trick me and you don't have to shove it down my throat. You're modeling the behavior you want me to use. And most of the time, I will use that. So paraphrase what people are saying, use their words, and do the deeper level of listening. Which then takes us to the M, which is make suggestions. And guess what? Chances are good you've come into this conversation knowing exactly what everybody needs to do. Wrong. Okay, so when I'm talking about making suggestions, it's not you. It is ask the other person for her suggestions first, and then continue the listening and the paraphrasing. Because I might have the world's greatest suggestion of what we ought to do next, but if I'm cramming it down somebody's throat, it's not going to go anyplace. Mm-hmm. We all want to participate in a solution we have helped create. And so if I say to you, okay, so what do you think we ought to do about this? Number one, it shows you that I'm interested in your opinion, and it's not just all about me. And number two, it gives you self-worth, because you see, I believe you're a person who does have good ideas, and I want to listen to them. So once again, through the active listening and through asking these questions, remember you put together those questions in advance, and now when you're asking for suggestions, you're making the person feel better about being in the conversation. And you're taking out the, banging heads against each other thing. So make suggestions and have them make suggestions first, and then you can talk about stuff. And when you have suggestions that you think will enhance what the other person is saying, share them in that way. It's that, what I really liked about this idea that you had is this. And what do you think about adding this to it? And then it's adding something to what they're suggesting. It's not suggesting something else entirely. So that's the make suggestion part. And what usually happens at this point is that most of the tension level goes down and people start to relax, because they realize this isn't a problem that we can't address and make better. We can do something here. And then the anxiety level goes down. And a lot of times people think, well, I came into this conversation really anxious. Now I'm feeling relieved that it's over. But it's not. Because what will end up happening is that the final D is make decisions, decide next steps. And what happens is that because the tension level has gone down, a lot of times we don't say, okay, so now that we know this, what do you think we ought to be doing next? And because we don't come away with clear next steps, we're going to have the same conversation a week, 2 weeks, a month from now, because we haven't figured out what we're doing next. So never fail to get to that point where you decide, okay, here's what we're going to, let's decide what we're going to do together, and outline what the other person or people are going to do and what you're doing. And know whether or not they are people who are going to need some support in holding up their end. Because a lot of times if somebody agrees to do something and they don't get around to it, then we can get back to that, geez, they made this promise, they're going back on their promise, what a jerk they are. If you understand that somebody has a different approach than you do and aren't as deadline driven perhaps as you are, maybe what you do is you reach out with a note of encouragement or voicemail or a quick conversation in the hall of, hey, if there's anything I can do to support you on this, and I'm saying support, not do it for them, let me know, because I know that you want to get it done by this time. It's not us wagging our fingers, it's us encouraging. Mm-hmm. And when you go through a GAP MD process, you end up creating something oftentimes that's better than the situation was before the problem arose. because now you're more in touch with who this person is. You're working together to create something better. And because you're working together, it's not you're telling them what to do, they're telling you what to do. It literally is us creating a solution together.
I love that. I love that. So, Lynne, can you give us an example? I mean, I know some of these conversations take a long time, but can you give us like an example of a way that you've done that and seen that happen?
Okay, so you can see kind of in the corner over there, something sitting on top of my radiator. That's actually a blowtorch.
Oh, I love this one.
And so, yeah, so the blowtorch story, which is I had a CEO who was having a really bad day, and his assistant called me up to tell me that we needed to move our meeting back from the morning to the afternoon because he'd been in New York all weekend. He was supposed to be on his sailboat. The weather was lousy. He didn't get out at all. The weather continued to be lousy on Sunday. And so his flight was canceled. He was flying in on Monday. And so we had to move the meeting back from the morning into the afternoon. And she said to me, you know, he's in such a foul mood. He said he just wants to torch all the text that you wrote. And I thought, there's a meeting I want to go to at 3 this afternoon where somebody wants to torch my copy. And so I went through the Gap MD process. Well, who is he? What's he afraid of? Well, it's the first time he's ever had to write a shareholder's letter. So, he's afraid that people won't take him seriously as a leader. That's one of his fears. And second, he really wants people to believe that he's a good leader and can manage this company and lead it well. So I knew that about him. So my goals became to listen more than I spoke. So I would have a clear understanding of what it was that he wanted this text, what he wanted, the changes that he wanted to make, to be of support for shareholders who are going to read this text. So to make sure that he wasn't taking out things that were important for them to know, to be the shareholders' advocate, since it's their letter, and third, walk away with a clear direction. So if he was saying things like, well, I don't like the flow of the text, there's nothing I can do about that. I wanted to have a clear direction for next steps. And as I'm thinking about these things, I see that blowtorch over there. So I pick it up and bring it with me. And I'm sitting in the conference room and he walks in the door, clutching the papers in his hand, really angry. And I looked up at him and I said, your assistant Debbie told me that you wanted to torch this annual report copy. So here, and I held out the blowtorch. Here's a blowtorch, torch away. And there were a couple of seconds I wasn't quite sure which way this thing was going to go. Then he looked at the blowtorch, he smiled, he put down the text. He started telling me a long story about how he had once used a blowtorch to take all the barnacles and old varnish off the bottom of a wooden sailboat, his first sailboat. And after he finished telling me the story, he looked at the blowtorch and said, nice blowtorch, put it down. And we sat down to do the text. And he didn't have that many changes. And if I had not been clear on my goals and who he was, I never would have picked up that blowtorch. And that meeting would have gone quite a different way. So being in tune with who he was and what I wanted to have happen made this a better conversation and brought us closer together. That's always your goal for difficult conversations.
Yeah, that is great. I tell you some great advice. So quickly go, because I didn't have my normal spiral notebook right beside me like I do at my own desk. Mm-hmm. So quickly say what the letters stand for again, in case somebody else missed it, and then we'll go from there. So
certainly. So the acronym is a GAP MD. You're becoming a doctor of persuasion. So first, right. A stands for audience. Be clear who it is that you're speaking with. Gotcha. G stands for goals. Set your goals in advance so you get your conscious mind and your subconscious mind working with you to get there. The second A is for ask. Ask good questions, write them down in advance. P stands for paraphrase. So play back their words and at the same time, listen for understanding and empathy so that you can hear their words and play them back. M is for make suggestions and have them go first. And D is decide next steps so that you don't have to have the conversation again.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Lynne is going to be teaching at the Wow the World. You do not want to miss her. Like it's, oh my gosh. And she's going to have about 45 minutes so she can really get into things with us. And I know it's going to be a great learning. And she has lots of fun stories. She loves to tell stories as part of her presentation. So you'll be entertained and engaged, and you'll be learning along the way. And I'm so glad you shared today again about the I just talked to somebody about this last week, and I said, well, my friend Lynne was here. She could tell me again why this works, about the writing on the page, about the left to right. I just think that's so powerful. That just doesn't happen on the computer when you're just like typing something in there. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. Because what ends up happening is that when you sit at a keyboard and just move your fingers, it doesn't stimulate your right brain the way writing does. Because as far as our brains go, we've been writing for a whole lot longer than we've been typing. Yeah. So our brains are more wired for, sometimes old school is best.
Yes, sometimes. Well, even on the caves, the hieroglyphics and the things that are on the caves, I mean, for probably, I guess, the whole time of mankind has somehow written or made descriptions physically. It's a physical thing, right?
Hey, well, the progression is 100,000 years ago, we told stories to share information from one town to another, from past information from one generation to the next. 27,000 years ago, we started augmenting those stories with cave paintings. Written text is only about 3,000 years old.
Oh.
And and then PowerPoint came in about 40 years ago, and then everything went to crap. So
I love that. So Lisa asked a question, but I know you have to go because this is an important meeting that you've got to get to. So
okay, so self-sabotage, that's when you're taking a look at the front end of the cycle, who this person is and what your goals are. And and what are the hot buttons that they push on you? Because those are the things that start the self-sabotage. When you turn them into people to resist, when you hold a grudge, because that's where sabotage begins, when you hold a grudge, acknowledge that you've got that. And then that erases your awareness so that you're not going to spend time there. That goes back to confirmation bias, where you're looking for things that support why you should be sabotaging them or even yourself. And so it's knowing, when you talk about sabotaging them, that's the audience part, the A, and talking about sabotaging yourself, that's the goal part for you. What is it that I want to create for them and for myself as a result of this conversation? And when you create that awareness, your subconscious mind starts working on that and helping you avoid the sabotage.
That's probably also why when you're thinking of things before you go to bed, you're like, thinking of your goals, your visions. And then, it's just amazing. You go to bed and sometimes the answers come to you in the middle of the night, right? So I guess your brain's working.
Oh yeah, your brain is always working. Your brain's always working. And so I say, let it do that to get you what you want.
It's like, okay. All right.
Thanks for the opportunity to hang out with all of you this morning.
You're awesome. We will see you in February.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Lynne. All right, everybody. Thank you. What a great time to have Lynne with us today. And it is just such a blessing. I get to talk to her every week. So I have this blessing every week of we just share ideas and business and relationships and everything. So you will be so blessed with her as with all the speakers. So I'm going to point out matter of fact, I'm going to do just a little switching here of my virtual background and see where I'm at. I'm going to get a lot of fading out. How my hair will probably fade away and all of that stuff, because on this particular platform, it kind of does that. But I want to remind everybody. So you have until November 18th. Now, y'all, today's the 15th. So you've got today, the 16th, 17th, 18th till midnight to at least get your deposit. So $50 deposit will hold your spot and the discount. So the discount is $200 off the regular price. The regular price is $397, and you want to save $200. The truth is, I don't want anybody paying full price. That is not the goal. The goal is to give you the best opportunity to come so you can hear wonderful speakers like Lynne and Lisa, who spoke last week. and Kathy, who was the week before that, and Dr. Laura. So we've really been so blessed these last 4 weeks. So I want you to go ahead and really think about that. The QR code is right there. It's pretty easy. WowTheWorld2023.com gives you all the information. So make the deposit that holds the spot, and then you have until January the 3rd to pay the rest of it, to finish it out. And that way you'll have your ticket, go through the holidays, enjoy yourself, and, don't think about it. And then by January the 3rd, finish it out. And then you'll be 1 month away from joining us in Las Vegas. Again, the blessing of having these brilliant speakers will be with us. We're going to have live music. Those that have been before know that. Larry will be with us. He's my producer, and he's done my albums, my singing CDs, whatever we go. I still call them albums because that's what they were, right? But CDs, whatever, however you want to describe it, he does my production for all of that stuff. And so you will love having him in the room. Everyone gets to do their 1 minute. Don't let it freak you out. So here's the thing. Sometimes I go to places and I see some people across the room. It's like, man, I would just love to know what she does. But we never have that opportunity because they're just different types of networking events. Not to, there's different kinds. And so sometimes you get to do that. And sometimes I have a chance to get to that person to talk to them. But in this situation, you will have the opportunity to hear every single person. So they're going to be spaced, and not all at once. Okay, not everyone's going to do it. We're not going to go just do it right behind each other. So I'm going to spread them out 5, 6, 7 at a time in groups, and then you'll have a chance to make your notes and write their name down so that then you can make that contact with them. That is a crucial point of what we're doing, a Christian Women's Networking experience there in Las Vegas. So I am very excited, just in case you can't tell, to have all of you join us. And several of y'all on here this morning. Terry Ann got her ticket in the last couple of days. Dr. Denise is going to be there. And of course, Lisa and Karen, I think, is also. She's waiting on some things to finalize. So I am just thrilled to look forward to that day when we're going to be in Las Vegas. We're going to walk into that sunrise room, and it looks out over the strip, and it just gives you that feeling of, oh, just isn't it great to be here? So I want you to be here. Can you tell? All right. So next week is Thanksgiving week. We will be together. And I think what we're going to do next week is that Dr. Laura and Lisa will be back on as co-host. And we're just going to talk about things we're grateful for, maybe special Thanksgiving times that we've had in our life. Just going to be back to our coffee chat of chatting and getting to know each other. And we'll love hearing from you as well. So thank you all for being here today. Remember that life is not a matter of chance. Aren't you just so glad? Aren't you just so glad life's not just a chance, a random thing that you just have to live with? It's not. It's a matter of choice. We get to choose every day who we want to be, how we want to be, how we want our life to look. Those decisions, those small decisions every day make the huge difference where you're going to be next week and next year based on the decisions you make today. So thank you, first of all, for being here today and choosing to be here. So go out, everybody, make it a great week again, because it is your choice. Bye now. See you next time.